countdown.
Yeah. How about that music opening, huh?
That sounds good. I was like, where's our
Welcome
countdown?
to Conversations with Bob and Sherry. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, did we start it?
Yes, we're doing it.
Yeah, I was looking at for the countdown. Well, that was great. Well, hi,
You missed
Bob.
it. It
Long
was
time
there.
no see.
So before we get into the topics, I want to say that that was really a great party last night. The first annual Mostly Politics New Year party. Is that what
New
you
Year
call
party.
it?
Yeah.
And Sherry did a great job of everything. You did it all. Hosting, food. You kept people engaged, entertainment. I thought it was fantastic. It wasn't one of these you just show up and eat and drink and mingle. You had those activities, the trivia and things, really to get people to kind of, bond together. And it was really cool, really good.
Yeah, I love the trivias. It was fun. The trivia was fun. And I think next year we got to get a bigger championship cup. So,
Yeah. Sean Jones won all the trophies.
Yeah. We want to thank everybody for coming, of course. That was a good time. I love entertaining. I love making great food. And so it was a good time. The music was great.
You know what? We're a good fit because I love being entertained and served great food. So
there you go. And hey, I want to thank you and your wife for giving me this beautiful Christmas gift.
The Mostly Politics tumbler.
The tumbler was used a lot last night, so this is why I have a little bit of rough morning.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's
Do you
talk
want to
about the
start?
Corvette in the garage. Let's start with, so you did some research on the presidential.
Yes.
Okay.
Presidential Records Act, the PRA. So it was put into place after Nixon, and because before that, the records of the president were considered private property because of all the, Nixon scandal. The public wanted those records and he wanted to keep them and destroy them. So that's where the act came from. So the act requires every president to keep certain records. So it tells you what records have to be kept. And then when the president leaves office, they're to hand these over to the National Archives. And there's a person, an archivist, assigned to that project to receive all of those documents. They ultimately end up in the presidential library. So, I learned this recently. The presidential libraries are built with private money, foundation money. But once they're finished, they're donated essentially to the federal government. So that's why the National Archives, I guess, takes control of them, and then they put those documents in there. So that's the thing. And we all know that Trump received tons and tons of bad press for putting secrets of country at risk, national security, all this stuff. And it was funny when they found documents in Biden's office and home. And, the press kind of flipped. It was, it's a small number. When you read their articles, it always says it's a small number. And then there's a bunch of people reporting why Trump's is really bad and Biden's is not.
I think here's the distinction, right, between the document Trump has and what Biden has. Number one, the National Archive have staff. They were the people that packed all the documents, and they were the one sent into Mar-a-Lago. And then I believe the Trump people and the National Archive and the people that would classify clearance has been the one that going through those documents, and then they were deciding what to take back, what Trump can keep, and it was in a room in Mar-a-Lago, padlocked.
Mm-hmm.
By the direction of people from National Archive and, I believe some people from the FBI. And so my understanding is they were working back and forth up on those documents, and they know exactly where those were stored based on their instruction.
Are you certain about the National Archives delivering them to Mar-a-Lago? Because I couldn't find that anywhere.
Yeah, I heard it on one of the news channels, one of the mainstream news channels. That was the whole chain of custody, because another important thing about these documents is the chain of custody. Who has touched these documents and have access to them? So
Well, maybe, I mean, here's what I heard is that, the National Archives received their documents and they contacted Trump to say there were about 24 boxes missing, that he needed to hand over 24 more boxes. So, I was not clear to me how they knew how many boxes there should be. But like I said, I couldn't find anything that said that
if they
they actually
packaged it,
moved
I'm
them.
sure they knew, because how do you know there's 24 boxes missing if you have no record of knowing what went, what left,
Right.
what was gone? And so Trump left office in 2017, January 2017, and this has been
2020.
2020, 2021 that he left
Right.
office.
21 is
So
the
we're at
election.
2 year mark. The difference is who packaged how did Vice President Biden at the time had those classified documents? The news, the drip doesn't make it sound good because they're all over. It just seems like they're over the house.
Right.
At the
Yeah.
Biden Center and the Penn Biden Center, it was actually locked in a closet.
Mhm.
But then they found 3 separate times they found documents in Biden's house.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in the garage next to the Corvette, I believe they said was one piece of paper. I mean, what are they doing with these things? It sounds
I
like
don't
my
know.
son's math homework. There's one in the kitchen, there's one in the garage.
Well, my question. So first of all, I don't know if everyone realizes, but the first documents at the center, they were discovered November 2nd. So they were discovered about a week before the midterm elections.
Yes.
And the ones in the garage were discovered in December. We're just now hearing about it.
And then they have more documents discovered the last few days, right?
Oh, have they?
In the library, yep. There's another 5 pieces of paper from somewhere else, another
Well,
part of his house.
I have you been able to find anywhere why these attorneys were going through all his papers?
We don't know. We don't
I
know
don't
why.
know. I mean, they said, well,
It's
he's
been 6
moving out
years.
of that. He was moving out of that office. Oh, okay, but that doesn't explain why they were searching the garage. And just because he was moving, why do his attorneys have to go through all of his documents? I mean, did he suspect or did he know that he had some things he shouldn't have had? And he was trying to cover them up and get clean. I don't understand why it's necessary for the attorneys to go through all
And
this.
why is it now?
Yeah.
It's been there for 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they just report it on this now? Now, the mainstream media is reporting on this now, too. It almost feels like the media and the Democratic puppet masters behind the scenes are doing something. They want to get rid of him. They don't want him to run for president. Because couldn't they just burn the documents? And
Yeah,
now that it comes out,
I think burning them's a bigger crime. Now, what's I found interesting is the penalty for violating the Presidential Records Act is 3 years in jail. So maximum of 3 years in jail, which doesn't sound like that much if it's sort of a treasonous, this national security thing, 3 years in jail. I think that they don't expect any presidents to violate this. It seems like everybody goes along with it. I'm not sure that Trump did. I mean, they said they asked him for the 24. He gave them 15. They wanted the rest of them, and he would refused. And that was when the National Archives went to the Justice Department and asked them to get involved.
wouldn't it be interesting that maybe some of the Trump's document has something to do with the document that Biden has?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
That's a great question.
yeah. Maybe Trump wanted to keep those documents for a particular reason.
Well,
And
if you want to go full blown conspiracy, what if he was trying to hide proof that he, of his involvement in all the Hunter laptop stuff?
yeah, but it's already in the Hunter laptop. So, I mean, it would be kind of interesting if those documents kind of, have something to do with each
Right.
other.
I mean, what if the attorneys were going through all the files to find anything that might connect him to these shady deals and destroy it?
Let's put our little tinfoil hat on. But
Well,
yeah, I just
I don't
found it
think
interesting because Trump refused to give those statements, and because Trump was the president, so
right.
he has all the power to declassify or classify however he wanted to be.
Hmm.
So if he decides to declassify those documents, nobody has anything to say about it. Another interesting thing is, even though Biden was vice president at the time he took those documents, which still we don't know the chain of custody, we don't know who come in contact with those documents, and then supposedly Hunter Biden, that was the Delaware address is Hunter, where Hunter Biden lived for several years, and nobody knows who came in and out of the house,
Hmm.
and it's just so funny to me. This one page is wound up in the garage. There's 5 pages somewhere else.
Yeah.
Um, and these supposed to be top secret documents. Another question is, and I think a lot of people are asking, is that the lawyers, the attorneys for Biden, do they have national security clearance
I don't know.
to
I don't
see to
know.
even come in contact with these documents?
Hmm.
Um, One little mention, the news channel, major news channel, they're saying how Biden was collecting $800,000 from the University of Pennsylvania,
Okay.
where the Biden Penn Center, and China donated, anonymous Chinese donor donated $40 million, and not only Biden was making money out of University of Pennsylvania for doing absolutely nothing,
Hmm.
and so as his Secretary of State. So I don't know who that was, but that's what was reported. Um,
Okay.
but then Biden says, well, I don't know what those documents are. My attorney told me not to ask about it. Well, he's the president of the United States now. He
Right.
has all the power to declassify those documents. He has all the power to see them. His attorney doesn't have the power he has. So
Hmm.
why would you be, as a president of the United States, says, well, I don't even want to know what those documents are.
Could he retroactively declassify them? I mean, it seems shady that he could to say, there's another interesting twist that, the law exists, but presidents have been doing executive orders to change how the law is applied, the PRA.
Right.
And George W. Bush, his executive order said that the PRA applies to the vice president as well. Obama reversed that. So when Obama came into office, kind of like, if I remember correctly, the attitude was sort of throw out all of the Bush, executive orders. But he reversed that so that the PRA did not apply to the vice president under his administration.
Maybe Obama doesn't trust Biden.
I don't know. I mean, I
I
don't
think
know if that's good or bad. I mean, if it didn't apply, is it worse for him to have documents if he's not even under that, or is it better? I don't know.
I think the presidential records that it's actually giving the president a lot of leniency for the
Yeah.
documents.
Oh yeah.
But
Well, I mean, the U.S. government does not want to be arresting and trying presidents. I mean, it's just a bad look around the world, and that whole thing. So, I mean, in a way, Trump's his own worst enemy, though, too. I mean, Biden, when you saw Biden, he handled it like a politician. He said, we're cooperating fully. We're cooperating fully. And, Trump never said that. Trump was like, they're out to get me. And, not giving them anything, that kind of thing.
well, Trump Trump is not a lifetime politician, so
No, correct.
he was the boss. So Obama actually famously said, don't underestimate Joe's ability to F things up. Okay, so if Obama decides that he
I
doesn't
mean, like
want to
the
take
economy.
yeah, well, I, Joe Biden was wrong in all the foreign policy decisions. If up to Joe Biden, we would have never had killed Bin Laden, right? Because Joe Biden is the one told Obama not to do, and Obama ignored his advice, and thank God he did.
Yeah.
So Obama is, I give him, whether you like him as a president or not, he was a very smooth politician. He was a smart guy.
Yeah.
But if Joe Biden's boss saying don't underestimate the ability for Joe to F things up, then I can understand why he would take that away from Joe, the PRA. because
Yeah,
George Bush had a
again, I'm not sure if that's good or bad. If it's like, I mean, so the PRA, I don't know. I mean, it governs how the records are handled. So in that sense, maybe it's better it didn't apply to him. But you
right.
could also say then he had no business even having documents. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean George Bush had a very, very again, bad or good. He was a very capable vice president. He had Cheney. So Cheney actually was more of a partnership, and I don't think Biden was like that to
Yeah.
Obama. I mean,
Oh,
just
yeah.
of course we don't know what actually goes on, but but it's just so funny that how this all backfired, the classified document situation,
Hmm.
and all, and who comes up with this saying, "Oh, we found a classified document in the garage, but it's actually one piece of paper," and but at least made the Corvette Stinger famous. I believe
Right.
you got to wonder how much those cars are going for now after this.
That was Joe going off script. Before that, he was reading a statement. And he went off script and said, well, my Corvette's in there. It's not like it's out in the street. Well, I mean,
Right.
Mar-a-Lago, have you ever seen Mar-a-Lago? I mean, there's a gate. You can't, I mean, Mar-a-Lago's pretty secure.
Right, it's a private club, so only
Good luck
members
trying
can
to
go
get in there.
Hunter's not allowed in. And didn't Trump kicked out Jeffrey Epstein? I think,
Yes,
yeah, he kicked out
because
Jeffrey.
he had saying inappropriate things to one of the other members' daughter, like
Yes,
16-year-old girl. Yep.
so he kicked them out. So
Yeah.
yeah, and of course, nobody want to talk about that.
No.
So, well, here's some interesting news that in the news we don't know. People are catching up. Which one do you want to start? Do you want to start from the
Whatever.
reparation, the COVID,
Whichever
overstate?
one you would like to talk about.
Let's talk about the San Francisco reparation
Okay.
committee.
Yeah, give us the lowdown on that because I'm not
Okay,
as up
so
on that one.
apparently the city of San Francisco has a reparations committee.
Okay.
And so when you have a committee that's on reparation, of course they're going to be proposing things.
Hmm.
So apparently they are proposing paying each black longtime residents $5 million and granting total debt forgiveness due to the decades of systematic repression faced by the local black community. And we know California, a couple shows ago, we talked about California wants to pay the California black residents $350,000.
Okay.
So San Francisco is going a step further. It's a lump sum payment of $5 million
Per person.
per person. Here's the criteria this is what you have to do to be eligible to the program.
Okay.
Number one, the applicant must be 18 years and older and have identified, not born as, but as long as you have identified as a black or African American on public documents for at least 10 years. That's one of the criteria.
Okay.
18 years older. Number two, have to be identified as black or African American for 10 years. You must prove at least 2 of the 8 additional eligible criteria, which some of them include you have to be born in San Francisco between 1940 and 1996.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a proof of residency in San Francisco for at least 13 years,
Mm-hmm.
or personally or direct descendant of someone incarcerated by the failed war on drugs.
Well, so what's the price tag on this? How much, where's the city of San Francisco supposed to get all this money?
Yeah, and here's another thing. And this is a further one. The plan also calls on the city to supplement lower income recipients' income to reflect the area median income about $97,000 annually for at least 250 years. So this is in addition to pay the the longtime black resident that was born from 1940 to 1996. So if you're born 1997, you're out of luck. And then, but if you're a supplement lower income recipient, now they want to raise it up to 97,000 for at least 250 years. Now, we don't know what criteria you have to do for that. And then this is what it says. Black households are more likely to hold costlier, riskier debt and more likely to have outstanding student loan debt. When this is combined with lower household income, it can create an inescapable cycle of debt. Eliminating this debt gives black households an opportunity to build wealth. The African American Reparation Advisory Committee has not yet received any feedback from the board regarding their position on the recommendations or when the board will schedule a hearing formally discuss the plan. So I don't know where this is going and whether it's going to pass or not, but by putting it out there, you are giving people expectation.
Well, sure.
Now if people receiving less than what this proposal does, if they're not receiving at all, if this plan doesn't pass, it just creates more divisiveness.
I mean, I can't believe anybody really thinks that it's practical that it could ever happen that they would give $5 million to every black person over 18 in San Francisco. I mean,
1940 to 1996 birth. So individually.
It seems to me it's just for show, or it's, like a Trump ask for something really, really big and get something smaller. But like you said, it came from a commission or a committee,
a reparation committee.
Yeah, so they're going to recommend reparations. Look, we're doing a great job here. We want $5 million for everybody.
Right, we're doing a good job. I wonder how they come up with that number.
I don't know.
And then the $5 million, where's the $5 million come from? And don't forget, out of the $5 million they receive, half of it, 65% of it going to be gone, right? Because you have to pay 39% federal income tax if your income exceeds a certain amount. Is this $5 million tax-free? Or how's that work?
Yeah, I mean, giving people money, I mean, I don't think this is ever going to happen, but let's talk hypothetically. One of the things in the NFL is when rookies come in, they go through some speeches, training from some of the older players to caution them on managing the money, how to deal with family, how to make sure, and, because it's very common for them to just squander, millions and millions of dollars. And, that's also reportedly what happens with a large number of lottery winners.
Yes.
So just giving people money doesn't really fix anything. And, if you were to look at all the problems in the black community, I mean, if it's poverty, crime, I mean, you can work on those. I mean, why doesn't the city work on,
education's a big one.
Why don't they work on more public transportation, more services to help people get jobs and things like that? Why doesn't that exist in the poor black neighborhoods? I mean, I just feel like this is all just for show. They're not going to solve anything.
There's another thing. I don't know. So lately, there was a couple weeks ago or a couple days ago, somebody won $1.3 billion in lottery. And they say if you take a lump sum payment, you actually went up with $300-some million after. If you take a lump sum payment, you get half, and then you have to pay your federal tax, local tax. By the time it's all said and done, you clear $300-some million.
I believe the federal tax on lottery winnings is capped at like no more than 30%. It might even be less. It might be 28%. But if you were to actually earn that money yourself, it would be 50% plus to the federal government alone.
So that's what I'm saying.
But for lottery winnings, they have a lower bracket.
So at this $5 million, if hypothetically, if they receive a lump sum of $5 million, Are these people going to be have an understanding is it's now 5 million because you have to pay income tax. You have to,
Well, they would learn.
California has a 10 or 12% income tax. You have to put local, so you essentially you may get half of that money. So are people going to understand that? And the 97,000 they propose annually, again, it's not 97,000. Taxes are going to be taken out of it. And how are you going to give this lump sum of money to someone who has never managed money before?
Right.
And, and talk about money. I wanted to just talk about people mismanage money, okay? Here, recently, a very sad news, Lisa Marie Presley passed away at 54 years old. So apparently she inherited $100 million at 25 years old.
Okay.
That money was gone.
Really?
Yes. She inherited $100 million at 25. This is a clear example when someone is giving a ton of money, it disappeared. So inherited $100 million in 1993 on her 25th birthday. But it said it had almost entirely disappeared thanks to mismanagement and bad investment. And in 2021, her ex-husband wanted to, undo their prenup agreement and ask $4,600 a month on child support. Okay. And I understand her monthly expenditure is $97,000. Lisa Marie Presley. So
wow, $1 million a year.
Yes, 100. Well, if she would have managed her money well, having $1 million a year expenditure is probably not a big deal. No, but you give $100 million to a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, I mean, a diversified portfolio, she could have gotten that million plus, and that 100 would keep growing, and she could live on $1 million a year if she wanted. But
if she would inherit $100 million, just put it in a fixed interest savings account, collect the interest, you have $1 million a year. So that's what I'm saying is like just by handing these people money and not give them the background how to manage it's essentially it's sometimes could be a problem, could be a hinder. So
I was talking to a gentleman last night. He's an African American recent convert to a Republican. And I asked him why did you switch parties, and that launched into a conversation. And one of the things that kind of came out between us is the Democrat Party is very good at we feel your pain. Remember Bill Clinton, I feel your pain, I feel your pain. And by that meaning, they're great at talking about, so if they talk about the problems of racism and they talk about the problems of poverty, and so if they talk about all these problems, people feel like, okay, they feel our pain, they empathize with us, but they never do anything about it. I mean, in a lot of cases, maybe they want to, but their way of approaching problems is not going to solve it.
Right.
So, I mean, I think I really don't think this is ever going to happen. That I don't know why they did it, just for show, but
it's a lot of lip service.
Another example. Let's make promises and then not do it.
Right. This person I don't we don't talk anymore. I remember. We were great friends for many, many years. And I remember when I came out and told her I voted for Trump in 2016. And because over the years, my political standing, I don't go by the party. I pretty much go by the person. And she came out and she happened to say to me, first she was shocked. And then it's almost like she looked at me like I don't know any better because I'm an immigrant. How can you, as an immigrant, a Chinese and a woman, vote for this person, and you must not know better? Let me save you.
Was she a Democrat? Was she sort of liberal?
Yes, let me save you. And
funny how they turn on you.
and I think about and she also over the years gave me a lot of unsolicited advice on different things.
Okay.
And it almost
Was it
made me.
condescending? I mean, you feel condescending through, yeah.
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think after we don't talk anymore, I look back on all the things. I'm thinking, yeah. I mean,
Hmm.
you, you're born and raised in a country that provided you with everything, and here I was born homeless, struggled, and you know, my family work our way up to come to this country. If anything, I don't need to be saved.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't need a savior.
Yeah.
I,
You've proven, self-sufficiency. So,
we proven ourselves, and then that's what most immigrants, have done. But a lot of time people look at immigrant going, well, let me save you, let me save you. No, I mean, immigrants has gone through so many challenges, way more than the people that's born and raised in this country
mhm.
will ever understand. But there's always this, for lack of back word, white knight syndrome. But I don't think the Republican Party have that. I mean, Republican Party, maybe they're not sympathetic, but the construct is believing everyone individual. You have your freedom. You can make your
Right.
choice, and
I mean, and
and
it's a philosophical thing. I think the
it's
Republican Party
philosophical.
looks at it as it's not the government's job to meddle in, all these social issues. Treat everybody fairly, lower taxes, try to build a stronger economy, everybody benefits, but we don't meddle in people's lives. I mean, that's
Right.
kind of the philosophy.
It's
And,
like running a race. Everybody starts at the same point,
yeah.
right? And then whoever run faster, that will win. And then
Speaking of which,
yeah. Speaking of which, go ahead.
what's going on in Virginia? The
What is
schools.
going on in Virginia? Well, apparently, and then you did some of these. You did some of this too, right?
Yes.
Apparently, the Virginia School District is under investigation for allegedly violation Human Rights Act, and this is what's posted on the CNN website. So
It's,
Bob, tell us a
it's
little
in
bit about
Fairfax
that.
County, by the way.
Yeah, Fairfax County, which this is related to education. This is why they have a Republican governor, and the governor is ordering an investigation into this. So, Bob,
Hmm.
tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it started with at Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology, and then once the Attorney General looked into it, they expanded it to the entire Fairfax County schools. But basically, what it is, the students in Thomas Jefferson High School, where they the National Merit Scholarship honors, weren't given out in time. It's like they were withheld from the students. And the student population in this school is mostly Asian, is it not? So, they're looking at it as a discrimination thing against, the Asian students. And what I found interesting was I read the initial article you sent me was CNN, and I actually read the CNN, but it was talking of it. I felt like it really wasn't going to the problem. Like I felt like while I was reading this, I'm like, this doesn't really tell me what's really going on. What's the problem? So I found the Attorney General's statement, and there's they did quote the Attorney General. They quoted this statement or press release, but not this paragraph. And to me, this paragraph explains clearly what the Attorney General's doing. I'll read it. No student should be treated differently because of their race. Okay, makes sense. Students at Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology are amongst the brightest in the nation, yet some have been punished in the name of equity. Racism and race-based government decision-making in any form is wrong and unlawful under Virginia's Human Rights Act. The controversial admissions policies at the school, which have significantly decreased the amount of Asian American students enrolled in these recent years, is another example of students being treated differently because of their ethnicity. And he says his Office of Civil Rights will investigate any potential violations of the law and vindicate the civil rights of these students and their families. I mean, that's clear to me where he's coming from, but I don't know why CNN didn't explain that.
Well, I think the Asian student has been punished for being academically excel for many, many years in this
Right.
country. It just like uh, the black student want to participate in football program or basketball program, or whether it's a Caucasian student want to be in soccer and golf, and
Mm-hmm.
the Asian family is very strong on education. So you will see a lot of Asian kids participating in science and technology,
Right.
English and math club. There's no different with that. And yes, I believe this is unfair because I believe this is purposely withheld till after the college application goes in. And these awards will help these kids to get into
Right.
college. The Asian students have been discriminated against by the elite colleges
Mm-hmm.
for being academically successful.
Right.
So because they're saying too many Asian students in my college is not diversified enough.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody go to med school, you want to look at their ability to practice medicine. You're not looking the colors of the people's skin or the race of their skin, and their race or culture background. You want to know if they're capable enough to handle the job they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is absolutely, to me, is infuriating because as an Asian mother, as a Chinese mother, and I know a lot of Asian parents, we thrive on our kids getting academically successful and achieve. There's no different than if someone will get a football scholarship or be excel in golf or great at soccer. We are happy if my kids is the top of the math club or the science affair. You know what I mean?
Right.
So this is extremely infuriating to me. They should be investigated, and hard work should not be punished. Essentially, the Asian kids are being punished for working hard and making the sacrifices for
Right.
years and years and years to become academically successful.
Well, and I want people to really respect where you're coming from because, some months ago you had a group of, I guess they were all Chinese or other Asian countries meet with, one of the local politicians, just a chance to say, this is what we care about.
Yes.
And if I'm right, you tell me I wasn't there, but they didn't ask for anything. It sounds like they didn't ask for anything. They just complained about the schools. They just said, stop screwing up the schools, stop all this equity stuff. You're hurting our kids.
Yes.
I mean, that's all that it just sounded like they didn't want anything. They just said, stop screwing everything up in the school.
And years ago, when I first came to Pittsburgh to attend University of Pittsburgh, and I asked my school counseling, I said, well, I see all these scholarship programs, but none of them are geared towards Asian student or even just academic type of scholarship program.
Right.
And they said, well, if we offer that, all the Asian kids would take the program. And then years ago, there was a kid from India, East India, and he said he put on his college application, he identified himself as a Black American because he feels if he would say he's from East India, he will not
Right.
be admitted to college. Now,
And the mind. I tend to look at where's this coming from. Some things you can't figure out, but this one I know what their belief system is. I know where it's coming from, and it's on the left now. It's in our schools, but equality is pretty cut and dried, right? It's what this attorney general said in the paper. You can't treat people differently because of their race. Period. Or their ethnicity. So that's equality. That's the basis of this country. That's our Bill of Rights. Everything in this country is built on individual rights and equality for all. So now the left influence comes along and says, well, equality is no good. It's equity, and equity, it guarantees equal outcomes. And now that may sound nice to some people, but how do you go about that? And there's no way to guarantee equal outcomes without making people unequal in the beginning. So,
Yes.
in other words, basically make it harder for the Asian Americans to move ahead so that other people can move ahead of them. And they rationalize this by saying those kids are only smarter, they're only doing better because of some beneficial privilege they have in society. So nobody earned anything. It's not because their parents were hard, insistent and involved in their education. It's not because of the way they're raised or the culture that they came from. It's because they have an unfair advantage. If the society was fair, everybody would be equal on the outcome. There would be. That's what they believe. I mean, it's not correct.
I tell you what the privilege is. When my son was in kindergarten, I make sure he does 4 pages of homework a day. I have to give it to the teacher, to tell the teacher to give it to him to do it. He refused. There were times we would spend 8 hours. So here's the privilege if you want your kids to excel. Start them early, sit with them. Sometimes it will take hours. You will have to give up your personal time. You have to give up going out to eat. You have to go out to go have happy hours with your girlfriend. You sit there and do homework with your 4, 5, 6-year-old kid. And then that's how they excel in school. So this is the privilege they had, right? They had parents that care about their academic achievement. There's no different with the parents that sacrifice their weekends driving their kids to Kingdom Come to participate in a sports program. Okay? So those parents that was diligent and participating. Now, are you telling me what are the tennis sisters? What are the tennis, the 2 sisters that's great at tennis? There's a movie.
I'm not sure. 2 sisters that what?
2 sisters that are great at tennis.
Great attendance in school?
No, tennis.
Oh, tennis.
Yeah.
Okay. The Williams sisters.
The Williams sisters.
Serena and Venus.
Are you telling me they're privileged because they're tennis, or because their father has made them sacrifice so much so they can become who they become? Are you telling me LeBron James is privileged because he's making a ton of money in basketball? Is Tiger Woods, is he privileged when he's...
You're applying logic, though. Yeah, you're looking at accurate history, accurate logic. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Tiger Woods' father made him start doing golf at 5 years old. You don't think he wants to go to a playground just play? I mean, so are they privileged? Clearly they are, because if not, I think there should be a ton of Asian player in the NBA. How many Chinese Asian basketball player in the NBA? I think they are grossly underrepresented.
Well, white people in football, I mean.
Right. I think we should throw a bunch of Asian. 17% of the player in NFL and NBA should be Asians, regardless they're good or not.
See, that's the problem with all this identity. It's all relative. It's all relative. I mean, so we just applied the same philosophy, and they would say, well, no, that's not right because of this, and that. But it actually is the same logic.
Right.
But, so I accept. So I accept that certain kids are disadvantaged. Okay, I accept that.
Absolutely.
Based on where you were born, where you grew up, the how much money your parents made, the neighborhood you lived in, kids have, there are disadvantaged kids. To me, the way you help them is you lift them up. You provide all the services, the assistance, find the kids that are going to do well in school, help them, get paid, that kind of thing. So, that I think is fine. But there's no way. This equity thing always ends up taking the people that are doing well and knocking them down. And that's just going to tear apart. That's why the whole, Marxist, socialist, societies never worked.
Well, I can say
Oprah. They go, why should I try? Why should I even try? Why should I be hard on my kids if they're going to hit a roadblock because they're doing a good job? So if there's no reward for doing a good job, then nobody does a good job.
Right. Well, Oprah was very disadvantaged. Oprah had a very tough upbringing. Kevin Hart, which is a very highly earning comedian, he came from a very humble beginning. Very locally, Jerome Bettis, the star player of the Pittsburgh Steelers, he was disadvantaged. but
Right.
these people excelled in their, profession, and they didn't have anybody. They basically were taught hard work, and they were hardworking people themselves. And I mean, I can name probably hundreds of thousands of people that were born
Hmm.
disadvantaged and excel. Obama, he was disadvantaged. So, I
Right.
mean, he became the president of the United States. I don't know. It's very
Well,
frustrating.
I mean, there's one example I like to use. It's the Americans for Disabilities Act. So, if you have a business and you have to do renovations or any kind of work, you have to make your bathrooms meet the Americans for Disability Act. If you build a sidewalk, it has to have those sort of rumble
Right.
dots on it. And that forces those business owners to spend more money. Okay, that to me is a good application of equity, though. So because the sacrifice, if you will, on the part of the other people is really small compared to the benefit you're giving, the disabled people. So we can argue whether it's good or bad, but I think it's actually a good, application of it. But equality is foundational. Equity is not. You never violate, freedom, equality, individual right. You never violate that. So now, if you want to bring in and say we're going to strive for some equity, I say, okay, go for it if you want to, but you cannot violate the principles of equality and individual rights. Those are foundational. They don't change. And, so then find ways to even the outcome, even the playing field, without violating the rights and freedoms of the other people. That's what you
Right.
have to do. And there are ways you can do that.
Well, talk about equity. Um,
See, I'm on a little rant, but see, that's where my belief is. The goal of this stuff, the goal of this left wing ideology is not to build a better society, it's to tear down the one that we have. This is all destructive. None of it's constructive.
well, that's exactly what happened in China when they started the communism, and they make sure everybody gets fed, and it turned into 3 years of famine, and a bunch of people died of
Mm-hmm.
hunger. The original idea is to make sure everyone fed.
Right.
We'll talk about equity. This is an interesting one. The new owner of the Miss Universe is a transgender woman. So he's from Thailand. He or she's from Thailand. Is Anne Harold Female Dominance, and of course he was a biological male, taught to the stewardship of the womanly event. So now, for in the name of equity, does that mean in the future all these beauty pageants are going to include transgender women? Which I think that's pretty unfair
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, I hate to say this, but in Asian, in some of those transgender women are just better looking than biological female. I feel like they need to have their own thing because if they come in, they got nice legs and they got, they can really wipe out.
I'm glad you said that.
It's it's
When I
very
mentioned to
true.
you earlier in the week that Asian men make the best trans women. I didn't know it was one of those things. After I sent the text, I'm like, how's she going to receive that? I don't know if that was a good thing to say or not.
Well, I mean, living in Hong Kong for 7 years, I mean,
Hmm.
Thailand
Yeah.
probably have some of the most
Yep.
beautiful transgender women. And
Yep.
now in Thailand, they refer them as they call lady boy, and
Yes.
they are entertainers, but you will have a very difficult time separating those
Hmm.
transgender women with actual they're gorgeous. I mean, that's all I have to
Right.
say. They are gorgeous. Um, it'll be interesting to
And
see
they're
in the
the type,
pageant
the
world.
whole bathroom thing and everything. If someone like that who really looks like a woman, they're going to have no problem using a woman's bathroom. Everybody, they're a woman. It's fine. It's when this person is obviously not a woman that creates a big fuss. I mean,
Well, as a
you know
parent, my
Blair
biggest
White?
concern.
Are you familiar with Blair White? She's
What?
a she's a transgender YouTuber. She's conservative. Name's Blair White. Looks female, very attractive. So she wanted to illustrate this one. She went in. She said, "I'm going to go into. I'm a biological male. I am going to go into these stores and restaurants, and I'm going to use the men's bathroom." And they grabbed her. No, you can't go in there. You can't go in there. And she got harassed for trying to go into the men's bathroom. She's there. I have no choice.
My problem with some of the bathroom issue is that all came out. I remember my son was 8. That was 4. He's 12 now. It was 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think just the men are going to be pedophiles, and I believe some of the women, older women too. If I see a 40-year-old woman walk right after my son go into a men's room, I will have a problem with that.
Right.
I see any grown adult following kids going to the bathroom. That's the reason when the whole thing happened, I was really nervous. Now my son is 12. He's bigger than me. I don't have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But if I see a 12-year-old girl go into the bathroom by herself and then follow up with this person who may or may not identify as women to walk in, even though if I'm not the mother of that kid, I will go in there to make sure that child is safe. I mean, that's just the mother instinct.
Yeah.
I think it's more with that. It's more about the children. If I walk into the bathroom by myself, some guy come in, if I feel like I can defend myself and quickly exit, that's fine. But I probably feel very uncomfortable with that,
Yeah.
And recently, there's a lot of men going to women's locker room, or
There was a story. I don't remember where it was, but it was a high school. I think it was. It was like a gym, a YMCA, YWCA. Anyway, the girls' locker room. There were 16-year-old girls in there, and there was a biological man who considers himself a woman walking around naked with his penis hanging out. So you've got your 16-year-old girls in the locker room, and there's a full-grown, man, large, strong, walking around. So I just don't see how anybody can argue that's okay. But when one girl in particular complained, she was told she was in the wrong, that she had to change her attitude because she was being bigoted.
Right. So what happened to
That's insane.
So biological female essentially are being oppressed once again.
Right.
The biological male is competing in female sports. Yeah. Now they're competing in pageant. I mean, come on. Well, where are we going from here? Why?
It's this intersectionality thing, right? The trans people are more oppressed than women. So, their rights supersede yours. So now it doesn't matter if you feel oppressed by them because they're more oppressed than you. That's
right. So essentially, if this 16-year-old speaking out, if her parents speak out, then they're bigoted too. So if anybody who's competing in these pageants, I mean, these girls gonna walk around changing. There's a lot of intimate settings. So now it'll be interesting to see how many biological female are going to continue to compete in these pageants. Mm-hmm. These are all young girls. I think 18 to in their early 20s. So we'll see.
Did you watch the speech from the woman who owns the
Yes, I have. I watched it.
So I had a hard time with that. I mean, listening to that speech.
Because he's still in a male voice.
Well, yeah, male voice. And it's like in every way, shape, and form, she's saying, I'm the same as I'm a woman. I'm in every way. And I'm sorry, but you're not. I mean, we can call you, I'll call you she, I'll call you by whatever name you want to call me, and treat you nicely and well. But I'm sorry, you can't say that you're exactly identical to a woman. I mean, you're not. And here's what they believe, okay? And they're teaching this in some schools to our kids, that biology, sex is one thing. Gender is completely separate. And, you've even heard it said that they've told kids that the doctor, when you're born, they guess what your gender is. They don't guess. I mean, 99.9% of the girls, the females are going to be girls, and they may be more masculine, some are more feminine, and the same with the boys. But I mean, they don't guess. That's just ridiculous to say that it's a guess. But they really believe that this is a complete separate thing. And then if you choose to be a different gender, then it's healthy, normal, and natural to get surgery or whatever it takes to do that. And
I believe you were born with a uterus and you'll be able to reproduce, to
Right.
birth, to carry a baby. You're a woman. You're female.
Wow. there's a they're working on transplant uterine and
I saw that.
and vaginal transplants. They take them out of the let's say a woman who identifies as a man. They remove their uterus and their vagina, and then they can transplant it into a male who identifies as a woman. Now, here's my question.
Right.
There's two prevailing ideas about where, the meaning of life and where people come from. There's evolution and there's creation. So God created us, or we evolved through this natural biological process. Most people are somewhere in the middle. And,
Right.
That maybe we believe there's an evolution, but it's not the beginning. Anyway, tell me how a natural biological process creates a normal situation where people they have to have their bodies modified by knives and stitches, and so they need a medical intervention to live that out. How is that natural? And I mean, there's nothing natural about that. It doesn't fit.
Okay. Here's why whether this is successful or not. It will be interesting to see if a biological male gets a uterus, if they can carry a baby. But this is the best part. The estimated cost for uterus transplant in United States, $250,000.
Okay.
Okay, so it is pay out of pocket.
And of course, lifelong, hormone therapies and
another report says it could cost $300,000. So the medical industry, found another way to make a lot of money. So I'm thinking this is going to be very popular, and they're going to keep pushing this because you have a down payment of $300,000 to do this procedure, whether it's going to be successful or not. Then, like you said, you have a lifetime of mental, psychological, physical care for a patient. Can you imagine, if you can create multiples per patient? So this is big money behind it.
Yeah, that's also a factor. So I don't know. I mean, again, then they say, well, that's hateful, that's bigoted. I mean, I don't want to upset anybody. I don't think it's okay to make fun of people or, treat them differently or discriminate against. I think that's all wrong. But, to say that we have to force 16-year-old girls to allow a full-grown naked male body walk around their locker room, and they got to figure out how to deal with that. That's just silly. That's insane.
Well, I wanted to let's talk about. I mean, we're coming in this has been quite a long show, but I want to just address this real quick on the talk about patient. We talked about this article. Is a CNN contributor. Her name is Leanna Wen. Couple of days ago, she did an op-ed at Washington Post, talk about they're overstating the COVID death.
Right, which has been known for a long time.
Which has been known, but it's been shut down 2.5 years ago. If you talk about doing the COVID death, and people would tell you you're wrong, it's fake news, you get canceled, right?
Yeah, you get thrown off social media if you said that a couple years ago.
Right. So I want to read the thing that she said, which is interesting because these are things that was said in quiet or whatever, and then people said, no, you're wrong. So here's what she was saying. Number one, this is what she said. She said that patients diagnosed with COVID are actually in the hospital for other illness.
Right.
And so COVID was just incidental.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a really good
Right.
one.
They're not being treated for COVID. I mean, they're there for something completely different, and they die of whatever that thing is, and it had nothing to do with COVID.
Right. So
They're
then,
counted as a COVID death.
but now it's counted as COVID death.
Mm-hmm.
There was also something it says.
One thing she didn't mention, if you have COVID and then you recover, you could be, shedding viral fragments that can't infect anybody, but they'll test positive on a test.
Right.
So, I mean, these people may not even be sick.
Well, that's another thing. The shedding of the virus at the time was considered misinformation.
Oh, no, that was for the vaccine.
Right. And then they said, according to the
shedding
Center of Disease
spike
Control
protein.
Prevention, United States experience about 400 COVID deaths every day. At that rate, you would nearly be 150,000 deaths a year. These people are dying from COVID or with COVID. Okay. One of the things in the article, I can't find it now, is when she said, if you have a gunshot wound, and then if you die in a motorcycle accident, if you get tested for COVID, that become your cause of death.
Right.
Not the gunshot wound, but COVID.
Yeah, so she's catching heat for that, right? I mean,
She's catching heat because she was a huge proponent about lockdown, at the time. She was a huge proponent about vaccine. And now she turned around. The fact that she turned around and write this op-ed made me feel like something else is following this.
Right.
She probably going to be the scapegoat, but then now other things might come out from the CDC. Maybe my thinking is may have something to do with the Twitter file dump. It's been dumping and dumping and dumping,
Okay.
and a lot of truth has been revealed, and maybe she tried to get ahead of the Twitter file.
Right.
Yeah.
This is one example. I can't think. There are others of things that were squashed during the pandemic by the media. They were reported that it was fake. It was not true. And now that, we're pretty much out of the, pandemic, we are out of it. It's okay to talk about these things. Well, again, that's violating a principle. I mean, free speech is free speech. It doesn't matter if we're in a pandemic or not. So, they should never be violating people's rights like that, treating them differently because of things they say. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just, there's no double standard. So it's the press's job to report accurately and honestly. It's not their job to spin their report based on what's going on in society. Well, we're under pandemic, so we're going to say everything to enforce people to stay home, and we're going to say things aren't true that go against that narrative. So basically, they're supporting a narrative. But then now it's like, okay, we can talk about those things. It's okay now. It should never happen like that.
Right. And what she's saying is the COVID death count turned out to be 30% what's currently reported. So whatever reported, people actually died because of COVID. It's 30% of what's actually reported for COVID death. And then Center for Security Policy Senior Analyst Michael Waller stating not long ago, the Washington Post was calling us conspiracy theorists for saying such things. Now they are producing this op-ed. But the thing is, this is different from 20, 30 years ago. We have the internet. We have records of what these people are saying. It's only 2.5 years ago. If they're trying to change a narrative and start becoming more responsible in their reporting, it's a little bit too late because you said what you said. It just like they're saying, if you took the vaccine, you're not going to spread the disease, you're not going to catch it. That turned out to be completely false. So, and just really quick note, the CDC, the FDA right now is investigating the new Pfizer booster related to the stroke. And this is for people that are 65 years and older. And we're going to talk about that the next show.
Yeah. I mean, we
Yeah.
can. We could go quick now if you want. The bivalent. So they
Yeah, the
said they saw a
bivalent.
signal on one of their systems, and they were going to investigate. I thought that meant that they were going to get some people and test and experiment and things like that. But it turns out they were just going to look at more data. And so some have reported that the FDA, CDC have concluded that there is no connection. Okay. But when I go to the CDC website and I read the statement, they don't say that at all. What they
No.
say is that, we thought there was a big problem. We looked at some of the data. We think, we're not sure if there's a connection. The problem's not as big as we first thought. So, basically they're not going to do any more. And, but they have not said that there's no connection. They just said right now,
Yeah,
the
and
evidence,
the
that's
right.
it.
And the thing is, just people know this new bivalent vaccine has two spike proteins in it instead of
Right.
one. It's mRNA with two spike proteins. So it's the Omicron spike protein and the original COVID spike protein. And reportedly, there are people suffering from stroke. Some people, there's no proof of it, but we talked about this last time. Some people think that's why the Buffalo Bills, Dermar Hamlin, was the reason that he fell. But we talked about that last time. I just want to say, go Bills. I can't believe I'm saying that.
You like oh, that's right. Your husband's from Buffalo.
My husband's
We
from
have
Buffalo, and it was a nail-biting game. We
Uh-huh.
we thought it would be a huge spread, but it's not. I bet you I always say Vegas is calling the shot. So, if you put money on Miami, you won, because even though they lost, the spread was 13. So, but yeah, so now Buffalo Bills going to play the Bengals this Sunday.
Right.
So go Bills.
And they're in Buffalo, right?
Ooh, yeah. I
think
don't
so,
know
yeah.
where it's at, but
They were higher.
guarantee we'll be watching it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So that concludes our show. It's been a great week. For the people that came out to the party last night, you're invited again to come back next time, and hopefully we can grow that party.
Thank you, Sherry, for another great conversation. And thank you, listeners. See y'all next week.